In a world where superpowers rule, the old way of growing power was supposed to be dead and gone. But he didn't lose it. He carried it through every life he lived. While others show off their flashy powers, he quietly builds an entire age of cultivation from the ground up. With secrets from the past, strength that knows no bounds, and a patience that cannot be beaten. The old rules are thrown away and new ones are starting right now. As soon as a cultivator who knows everything steps into our modern world, everyone else immediately follows his lead. After surviving every hard trial, Baishu, the immortal seeker, finally stood at the gateway to the magical realm. But lightning blocked his path, and a god appeared to say that no new participants were allowed because the realm was too full, warning that if he refused to listen, thunder would strike and kill him. Yet the MC would not give up so easily. After training hard for 300 years to become immortal, he knew no one could stop him today. The old man roared with the power of a thunderstorm and shouted that he was being rude. MC charged forward, declaring that even a god couldn't stop him from striking down his foe, unleashing a massive surge of power before swinging his sword again to declare that no power in the heavens could halt his fury, and with one final, mighty strike, he shattered the deity, causing its form to vanish and the storm clouds to scatter as sunlight warmed his face, and he smiled at the opening in the sky, only to suddenly wake up inside another body being beaten by a group of rowdy thugs who had cornered him after he tried to steal their brother's woman, leaving Baishu confused and wondering if this was truly the magical realm until one of the bullies told him to look at himself. Maybe if he made the guy happy, they'd let him leave, so he stayed quiet until the man lunged and demanded, "Are you mute?" Which made MC realize there was no magical energy around, meaning he was definitely not in a fantasy world. He caught the punch with one hand, stood up, and asked, "Is he done?" While the thug grew nervous and couldn't figure out why he had suddenly become so powerful. Bayu kicked the bully away, just as his friend lit a blue fire, shouting that he'd teach him a lesson, but now there was no time for that. He was baffled by his missing spiritual power, but the bully charged at him to teach him a lesson about true superpowers, which shocked him since he'd never heard of them. He quickly dodged the attack, admitted his own weak skills couldn't win, then ran up and punched the bully in the stomach, sending him flying off the wall and across the room. While his friend came to, he was mildly surprised by what he saw. MC halted the flyer's plunge into the dark, then forced both men to their knees where they started begging for their lives. He let them go, and they immediately sprinted to the boss with all the news. One of them whispered to his friend that maybe that idiot Lian's powers had finally woken up. When he heard the name, Baishu was shocked, and old memories of his previous owner, Lian, flooded his mind, reminding him of how he lost his parents as a child before being taken in by his mother's friend, Lu Yurin. As a result, he developed autism at a young age and became a target of mockery, discovering that his attempt to cut the sky didn't lift him up but instead grounded him in this strange world as a mortal, where the special power he wields is known as a supernormal ability that most people here can awaken within themselves. But the true master of this body is different, unsure if the real owner could ever achieve immortality, until Jishu's worried voice cut through his thoughts, rushed to his side to ask why they were bullying him again, and urge him to use her powers to escape and run away if he couldn't fight, lest he get hurt, which finally made the MC realize who she was. From the memories of her adoptive mother's daughter, who used her superpowers to heal him whenever bullies left him injured, he realized that even her kind smile and relief that he wasn't beaten too badly came with a hidden cost. Otherwise, his powers would have sent him straight to the hospital. So he squeezed his hand into a fist and wondered if these superpowers were just a kind of magic. When he didn't answer, she tapped his forehead with her finger and grumbled why he was so quiet, only for him to stare at her in shock and ask how an ordinary person could hurt him. Ji crossed her arms as she worried his autism was getting worse, and he wondered if she was judging him. She slipped his arm through hers and urged him to leave it all behind, because their mother was already waiting for them at home. As Lian walked home, she found herself in a strange new world filled with endless rows of tall buildings, fast cars that could zoom hundreds of miles, and people of all ages dressed in ragged clothes that left their skin bare. Even though it breaks the rules, he feels like he's finally breaking free from the heavy chains of his old life, where strange powers rule everything and he knows nothing about their energy. No matter if normal training changes, a tough road lies ahead to build a new world, but he will keep going until he reaches his goal and ascends. Soon they arrived home, and as the elevator stopped at the right floor, the girl happily sprinted to the door. But then she spotted someone and stopped dead, frozen with fear. MC frowned, trying to figure out who had scared her so badly. After that, GC's father, G.I. Chengtian, stepped out of their apartment looking terrifying. He waved hello to his daughter and explained that he had stopped by to speak with her mom about something. Lu Yuan snapped at him to leave with a frown, but he just fixed his tie with a grin and teased that she didn't look too happy to see him. After that, he reached out to his trembling daughter and promised to return in just a few days, but when she flinched away in fear, he simply walked past Lian and told her that running would never get her away from him. MC looked at him and thought he was cheating, but after MC and Lu Yuan made up, MC even forgave Gi too, only for him to take over their lives with heavy interference. However, Li Zan's mind had no record of this, and seeing his adoptive mother Su Ji, he realized the situation looked grim and feared future trouble, so he knew he had to train as fast as he could. After clearing his head outside, he sat on a park bench to meditate, hoping to strengthen his own spirit so he could help the true owner of this body reach immortality by infusing it with ancient power. Even as the heat swelled through his veins, and he wondered if this rare sensation meant his body was destined for greatness. After that, the heat felt like old friends to him, his body wrapped in fire, and as he stared at his hand, he realized spiritual energy was so subtle he could master it in the blink of an eye. Yet, he managed to reach the 5th stage of refining his qi. Suddenly, a cry for help broke the silence, and he looked up to see a girl named Guxinhin lying awkwardly on the ground just a few steps away. It turned out a lustful guy was chasing her down, cornered her with a creepy offer to play, and when she backed away in pure terror, she reached out to Lyson for help. He glanced at her with no interest before turning his gaze on me, rudely ordering me to get out, to which I just looked back and said that idiots seemed to be everywhere. The guy got furious and told everyone he asked for this trouble, but today he's going to find out the real power of the 2nd level. As bright flashes lit up the sky, MC knew right away that he had awakened the power of thunder. He chose to see if today's harvest really worked. In a flash, thunder hardened into stone as the man stared in shock, wondering how he couldn't hurt him, until Lian jumped in to tell him that only fools get distracted by fake levels. The guy froze in terror, knowing what was coming next, only for the MC to punch him right in the stomach, sending him crashing down in pain while shouting that having superpowers wouldn't save him from everything. Suddenly, he felt soft lips press against his back as the girl sniffed and whispered that he smelled great, though she seemed buzzed from a drink he hadn't noticed. He took her hand, pulled her close, and traced spots on her body until she felt great, sighed deeply, and lost consciousness, and he figured the bad stuff was gone, so he brewed a cup of tea to help her wake up. Then her brother Goody Anju showed up, ready to hurt her, and he unleashed his level 3 superpowers. Lyson gave a tiny raise of his eyebrow before Tanju lunged at him, shouting that he'd kill him. He quickly tossed Tanjin onto the bench, slipped past the attacker's punch, and realized the guy was too slow, then grabbed his hand to show that even without any magic his low-level ability was more than enough to handle him. He slammed the man into a tree, stepped on his head as he hit the ground, and watched him grit his teeth in frustration, realizing the opponent was too fast to block and likely from the legendary Supreme Academy. MC asked if the man wanted to kill him, but as Tanju stood up and cursed, he vowed to humiliate him, yet refused to let him touch his sister, his anger burning hot while Lian wondered if he might use some special power. Right after that, the fire flared up and would have burned him if he hadn't leaped back just in time. Tanju shouted that his skill wasn't perfect yet, but his raw power was enough, so he stood firm against Tanju's fireballs without dodging, simply raising a natural shield around himself to block every strike. That's exactly why the fierce flames couldn't even touch him, while Tanju caught his breath, wondering why his fire powers weren't hurting him despite having an earth element. And when he asked who he was, the other man just told him to think more clearly before his blood boiled so hard he was about to explode, which was right because the intense heat forced Tanju to his knee and made him choke until MC stepped closer, pulled him together, and asked what was happening before poking him too. Instantly stopped the burning and asked if he felt better, leaving Tanju surprised and wondering if he'd been saved before the other man, simply said he was just misunderstood. He was driven by the need to keep his sister safe and had no desire to take his life. Tanjin finally opened her eyes, only to be shocked by the sight of her brother. Afterward, she stumbled over to Lyson to thank him for saving her, but Tanju stared in shock and asked if it wasn't him who came to her aid, only to learn she'd been approached by a stranger at the bar until Lyson stepped in. Realizing his mistake, Tanju awkwardly apologized, while the MC, indifferent to the fuss, declared that since everything was cleared up, he was leaving. Suddenly, the old man's loud laughter filled the air as he explained that since it was just a misunderstanding, they should talk it out, and when Lian asked who he was, he revealed that he was their grandfather, Gwen. If his help hadn't stopped his dear grandson from exploding, could the MC have invited him to his humble home and paid him for it? No, the MC just walked right past him and said no. Gwen, a man who studied superpowers and knew their ancient secrets, quietly crushed his grandson's abilities with his bare hands, leaving everyone to wonder how someone so strong could have learned such a terrifying power. Lian stopped and thought, there's no change in this old man's spiritual power at all. He is sick, but he can still feel when his energy shifts. He is a complicated man who calmly told him that none of it mattered before walking away. The old man didn't stop him, so Qianju, watching over Lian, asked his grandfather who the stranger was with such strange strength. Tanjan smiled and asked if that seemed strange, noting that she still found him cute, and he easily stopped his brother from hurting himself, maybe even finding a cure for Grandpa's leg trouble. The old man begged them to keep his secret and told his grandson to find out who he really was. He wanted to track him down, because if the rumors are true, this legendary hero could bring great fortune to his family. A fresh morning broke, and Yuan stepped into Lian's room where she handed him a new school uniform, a thoughtful gift since school had finally started, and he smiled with gratitude for her kindness. After that, Gishi walked into the room and asked why he had suddenly become so polite since he was really acting strange. She hugged her mom and feigned offense, claiming her mother had specially chosen this for him at the cost of 3 months' wages, even though she'd never bought herself anything so expensive. He glanced at the clothes and guessed his family was poor, yet they spent a third of their yearly pay on new gear, treating him like a true family member, and seeing Lian laugh until she cried while trying on her daughter's outfit. He smiled softly, knowing he had to protect this kind family in return. After that, they headed to study at Yejin, an elite international college where noble students with superpowers are taught by top-tier teachers. As he strolled by the students in his fresh new look, they all stopped to stare and whisper, and even though GCMC felt he had no special powers at first, GI smiled and help gave him the chance to walk these halls and shine. He never imagined that his sickness would turn him into a laughingstock for those kids. Just then, Chenhu and his crew showed up, so GI grabbed Lin's arm and dragged him away. Chenhu warned him that putting on fancy clothes won't make the others treat him like a regular person. His friends laughed, as the MC guessed this guy must be rich and powerful, and after failing to befriend GI, he kept bothering the real Lian just to get her attention. Chen stepped up, yanking him by his clothes to demand they settle the score, but G shouted for him to stop. MC stared him down with a scary look, told him to stop touching him with those dirty hands, and when he didn't listen, MC grabbed his wrist so hard it turned blue, and he screamed in pain. Other students rushed toward the noise while the guy shouted that this idiot doesn't value his life and dared touch his brother, who has a level 5 ability, promising an amazing show, but GC just stared in surprise, finding it strange. Why did he gain such strength? Meanwhile, Lian was wondering about different powers and their levels. The world of power is split into 8 main ranks, with the first one having 9 steps and the rest having 3 stages, while a strange list of titles like Qi Purification and God of War floats around. And even though Chen's friends suspect his new strength comes from awakening superpowers, they warn him to be careful after he easily beat them last time. Chenhu bit out that even if a fool wakes up with powers, he is still just a fool. If he dared to joke with him, he would kill him. So he waved his hand to send his dogs in a battle, while GC shielded Lian and shouted, "What are they even thinking?" Even though their boss had taken a liking to her, they attacked her, claiming the brother whose father managed the university was now the boss. So MC grabbed the girl by the waist to pull her away from his punch and save her face, causing her to blush at their sudden closeness. Lian missed her step and kicked the guy hard, making her wonder if Chenhu was right and his powers had truly awakened, until she spotted a bully sneaking up behind him and warned Liz and that the bully had just awakened his own crystal energy yesterday and was ready to beat him up. MC spun around to strike him, only to find he vanished, but a moment later he reappeared behind her, laughing and teasing that he was never gone. Lian found it fascinating seeing how they used the wind to glide through the air with just a bit of skill. It was too shallow, so he spun around quickly to surprise the man and hit him hard enough to send him flying several meters. Chenhu flew into a rage, shouted that the two were useless idiots, and decided to handle everything himself by rushing forward with his glowing attack, all while smirking to himself that as young Master Wanjin, he had been hiding superpowers inside him since he was a kid. Now he could unleash a brilliant blow that was far stronger than any other attack at that level. Fighting a mindless fool like him, who had only just awakened his power, was as easy as stepping on an ant. But then, all of a sudden, he stopped dead in his tracks, not even knowing how it happened. MC was so shocked he couldn't believe that a simple finger tap from this idiot had stopped his powerful strike, making him fall down in terror and cry out that it was impossible since he had just awakened his powers and only 6th level abilities should be that strong, until Lyson came over to tell him that experience is everything. She took a quick look at him and thought his 5th level power was a letdown, reminding him that since he promised to protect her family, he needed to know his place, and As he stepped closer, he shook with terror and begged to know what he planned to do, fully aware of his identity. MC flexed his wrist and warned him to listen closely, because from now on he would have to watch what he said and did. After that, he began to beat him, and his screams echoed all over the university. The students who were watching were shocked, yet some were secretly happy to finally see that idiot Qinhu get a lesson. All those hits took a few of his teeth and knocked him out cold. Ji sprinted over to Lian to tell her he'd truly gained his superpowers, and overjoyed that he could finally fight back, she hugged his hand and kissed his cheek, leaving him a little embarrassed. Sometime later, one of Qinhu's friends stumbled into a bar with girls and told his dad that Master Wanjin had said everything, asking if they'd been beaten by that fool. Trembling with fear, he admitted the truth and, taking a puff from his cigar, sneered that it was pathetic, mocking Qinhu for being too weak and asking for mercy only to grin, use his powers, and tap his forehead with the cigar to shock him instantly. After his superpowers burned him, the man turned to his subordinate and admitted that only his son could humiliate someone, but now that humiliation had happened. So Ren Wukong, the man who believed in the might of superpowers, gave a slight bow and promised to sort everything out so he could go find out what was happening. Qinsha smiled and warned him not to push himself too hard, promising to let him feel the full sting of Wanjin's trouble firsthand. After school, Lizen and Ji went home, where she scolded him for being too cruel to Qinhu and warned that his powerful family could get him into big trouble. He believed that the university held more spiritual power than anywhere else, and thanks to the ancient spirit and the true Tao body, he climbed to the 7th level of Qi refinement in less than a month, with the 9th level just waiting if he kept his focus. She waved her hand in front of his face and asked why he was frozen, but he just said the place was cool while she stared in shock, thinking it was the end as his condition got worse. They walked past a glass building, and MC stared at his reflection because something was on his mind. Right away, he grabbed the girl just as the glass smashed into a million pieces, sending shards flying in every direction. He sprang into action with his power to shield the crowd right before they took off running. Ji asked what was wrong, then saw with worry that he had a cut on his face. He told her he was okay, wiped the blood from his face, and realized that spreading his spiritual power to shield others had caused the attack to pierce his true form, only for Ren Wukong to arrive and call the man's ability to push back the strike quite fascinating. Lian gently pushed Ji aside to ask who this stranger was, only to be told he was a dangerous manipulator they had to leave immediately, while the newcomer scoffed at their 9th level power, warned Ji to be careful since he had touched something he shouldn't have, and then casually set a fire in his palm to lift an invisible hand on Liz Zan, which made Ji suddenly feel very uneasy. At the same time, he listened to his own feelings and knew this trick was something he already knew well. Next, Wukong tossed him so hard against the wall that the building's front cracked open. He yelled for him to get lost while sending heavy debris flying at him. Chi screamed his name in fear, then cried out that he was an idiot as the falling debris crushed him. Wukong smiled as he walked up to her and told her not to scream. Even though the master didn't need her, he said he wouldn't mind having a little more blood on his hands. He noticed something right away and spun around to see what it was. Fortunately, Lian was alive, so he scrambled free from the rubble and looked up, only to freeze when he spotted strange writing in the sky that made him panic. Yet with no time to wonder how it happened, he tapped in his power to check his new abilities, closed his eyes to focus, opened them again to see his hands move on their own, and realized these were the same techniques used by the disciples of Tian'an. Guided by the sky and powered by their inner energy, they were once seen as mighty warriors. He warned that if he tried his old tricks again, he wouldn't be able to hurt him. He darted away from the ghostly hands and struck from afar, slamming him to the ground, while Wukong spat blood and cried out in disbelief, then gathered every ounce of his power, waved his arms, and showered the enemy with flying rocks. Lian stood fearless as he grabbed a thick piece of metal, used a secret sword move to slice the broken pieces into tiny bits, which shocked Wukong into thinking he was looking at an immortal master until the metal pierced him and revealed it was just a bar, leading Lian to awkwardly smile and realize this world was totally different from the one he knew. Ji rushed forward to check on him, and after he bragged that weaklings like them couldn't hurt him, she angrily asked why he was laughing since he'd just scared her to death, while Wukong stepped in to warn them that insulting Wanjin would only make their lives a living hell. Ji promised not to upset any powerful figures, and then someone asked which gang he meant. Tanju, Tanjin, and their team were there, and he shouted that he wanted to see who dared to touch his good family, which left Wukong shocked while Tanjin immediately ran to his savior and embraced him under Gic's jealous stare, claiming they had been looking for him. She held on tight, saying he always smelled good, and he thought they were the brother and sister he had saved before. But now he was confused about why they were there until Qi, looking angry, asked who she was, and she answered that she was just a friend of this hero. Qi frowned and wondered why she didn't know about his new sweet friend. He told Tian he didn't know them and wanted her to leave, which made her upset enough to beg him not to say that. But Tanju pulled her away, scolded her for bothering him, bowed politely, and joked that he was just a naive outsider, so he hoped he wasn't offending anyone. While Wukong was still stunned to learn that the Gu family is so powerful and famous in Kongqing City that they rule everything from the military to science, even making the local law inspector agree with them on everything. The family who runs this place holds Lian in high regard, yet his dismissive behavior made it seem like he didn't care about them at all. He shouted that this wasn't possible. MC asked if he had calmed down yet, and the man immediately bowed and begged for forgiveness, claiming Chunsha had made him do it against his will. Lian wondered if he meant Chenhu's father, and he was shocked that their tiny argument had grown so big it touched his family's use of power. Tanju explained that Chunsha was once just a pet raised by his uncle Lian who left to make money and form a gang, so trusting him seemed risky until he told Lisan to handle it, and warned Wukong to stay away from them, after which the group confirmed the visitors were from the powerful Gu family, and invited them home to say thank you. MC said they didn't need to because his powerful family would protect his sister, so nothing bad would happen to her anyway. He went home, where Tanju eagerly urged him to consider her offer, only for Tanjin to rush up, beg him to join them to avoid their grandfather's anger, and catch his attention with her faint breath before he boldly pulled her close, leading to her embarrassment and her asking his intentions, while he then reached for her cleavage, causing Gi to shock and Tanju to smile that even he couldn't resist such temptation, all while he found a pendant in his pocket and wondered if it was a treasure from the earth. Tanju was upset, so he grabbed his head in disappointment, claiming he was just holding it and imagining things, while she replied that he looked sick again and suddenly obsessed with some strange little stones. Tanjin clapped her hands and explained that these were her grandfather's ancient treasures meant to ward off evil spirits and nourish the soul, inviting any interested man to visit their home where he could see many more. Thinking her grandfather surely understood the secrets of immortality and that heavenly treasures would only help him, he agreed to their plan and headed to the family estate with them. It turned out Gwen was already waiting with a fancy feast, and Gi stared at the rich food, wondering if nobles really have to follow strict rules, before Gwen smiled and told Lian he went out of his way to make his home look its best. He asked them to sit down, but MC cut right to the chase, pulled out the pendant, and demanded to know where he'd found it. The old man's face grew serious as he mentioned his huge collection of shabby treasures, making you wonder what about them caught his eye. He bragged about his huge collection of these things, insisting he knew what made them special, while Gi, who knew nothing about them, felt completely offended. Gwen laughed, boasting that he was an antique expert and offering to appraise the whole collection, which Li Zhen happily accepted while Gwen sent his grandchildren to look after their guest and called out to Li Zhen to follow him, leaving Gi worried until Tanju smiled and told her not to fret. Knowing his grandfather wouldn't hurt him, the two of them stepped into the elevator, where MC realized that if the old man wasn't lying, he must have been scared by how many magical treasures existed in a world of immortal cultivators, treasures that clearly weren't made by any superpower. They stepped out of the elevator into a hall dominated by massive doors, where Lian sensed a familiar presence and followed Gwen, who waved off MC's concern about his bloody handkerchief as just an old habit, before rolling his wheelchair through the room and inviting everyone to explore his vast treasure hoard while pondering why so many immortal cultivators seemed to have vanished without a trace. He realized that while he possessed a few meager supernatural tricks worth keeping quiet, the rest were just cheap junk that only a beginner practitioner would care about. Gwen poured all his energy into making these treasures shine, only to realize that the one he truly needed was right there in front of him, and they were completely invisible to him. He admitted he couldn't make his children happy and felt ashamed, while also wondering if he could ever learn to use that strange golden ring he'd seen in a display case that was clearly cursed, since touching it would drive anyone mad or burn them to death with black flames. Lisan stared at him with a frown, wondering if he was just trying to trick her. He told them it wasn't a curse at all. But would you? The ring answered his words and burst from the case, shattering the glass, while the old man was shocked to know its true name. MC waved his hand, and the ring slid onto his finger, shooting out dark energy that the old man blocked with a shield while staring in shocked awe. The fire never touched him, and in that moment, he finally understood that he was the one he had always been waiting for. He realized the Wuju ring wasn't a treasure, but a powerful tool, so he closed his eyes and traveled into the ring's spiritual world, landing in a scorching, hot land. As he spun around, he spotted a three-headed hellhound snarling at him, and in that moment, he realized the master from his past life had fought desperately to tame that very beast. But he never thought he'd actually run into it after waking up in a whole new world. It was a tragedy that his power was gone and only a piece of his soul left, until the hound roared and breathed fire from three mouths, forcing him to hide behind a shield and wonder if the mindless beast dared challenge him like a true master, only for the beast to spring at him with claws meant to tear him apart, making him ask how his spirit could ever match such a wild creature before he commanded the beast to sit, instantly pinning it to the ground as it whined in misery. Lian stepped forward with a dark presence, commanding the terrified hound to sit and obey, causing it to instantly shrink into a puppy. Lifting the creature by the scruff of its neck, he warned that if it ever disobeyed, he would crush its soul. The poor hound cowered under a threatening stare, but Lian saw a chance to give it a powerful new body that could match its master's strength, making it a valuable future ally, only to be interrupted by an old man's excited cry of joy that was suddenly cut short by a violent cough of blood, triggering an alarm while the protagonist realized the sickness was poison from Henshin Run and decided to treat it, dismissing the entire mess as none of his concern. But luck was with him today, for the ring would soon save his life as Damon and Dr. Andrew rushed into the hall, shouting at Lian to stop and demanding to know what she had done before the doctor began his work, and the MC explained he was saving the man's life. The man shouted, "Does he think he's completely stupid?" And it was clear he meant to hurt the old man. Lian raised a black flame in his hand and thought to herself that he was a clueless fool. Just then, Guwen's grandchildren burst in, chasing Damien and asking why he was fighting with their master. He shouted in anger that no one could call a bad kid a master and wondered if the old man was so foolish to believe a fake, while Tanju tried to explain his uncle wasn't bad, but had been misunderstood, only for his father to laugh and say he trusted what he saw with his own eyes, promising to care for him once he got better, even as the MC grinned at how he'd treat his sickness. After that, Damien called the doctor to help, explained he would do his best, and use his water power to wash the old man, though Lian realized treating internal wounds with water was called water healing. But since the poison was already in the heart, it was too late, and when the old man coughed again, scaring his family, the doctor apologized because the strange symptoms were beyond his help. His superpowers couldn't save him, so they'd best get ready for his funeral. Tanjin burst into tears at the outcome, while Damien, looking grim, blamed Lian and shouted in rage that she must have done something to the doctor while they were away, prompting Tanjin to beg him to stop and offer to try saving her grandfather herself if the doctor couldn't. He shouted that this scoundrel had hurt her grandfather and declared she would never let anyone touch him again. MC warned Damien that wasting time would cost his father his life, and while Damien called him reckless, the city's trusted healer Andrew knew he was right because the man had already sabotaged his efforts to save his father, leading the group to realize Andrew was likely stalling with a hidden motive, which finally made the man admit the truth and order the guards to arrest the killer. MC thought everyone was an idiot, so he snapped his fingers and called the hellhound out to show them. And the moment the giant dog appeared, the guards froze in terror, wondering if this was some kind of summoning superpower that shouldn't even exist, while Tanju stared in shock, realizing the master was far beyond anyone he knew. His uncle asked Lian who he was, stepped up to him with a scary look, and warned that he'd be in big trouble if he didn't be polite. He walked over to Gwen and saw that after a while, Gwen got much worse because he was losing his blood. But he didn't mind, because mixing those strange rules with the energy lines in his body could push out the poison. So he waved his hands to make needles appear from his palms, and while Tanju watched in wonder, Tanjin admired his skill, and Damien grinned, wondering if he could even heal a broken body or do something else entirely. MC waved his hand sharply, and suddenly needles popped up all over the old man's body. Andrew stared in shock at the Chinese acupuncture, and when Tanjan asked him to explain, Andrew revealed that while it's one of the best medical techniques in the country, used to clear blocked meridians, strengthen the body, and banish evil, such ancient wisdom has been lost to the supernatural powers of their time. Lyson saw that there was so much information, and, as dark energy flowed from the needles, he announced that the final stage had begun, using a powerful burst of energy to sweep the remaining poison from the heart's vessels. He suddenly shot energy into him, and right after that, he coughed while his grandchildren leaned forward in worry, only for Tanju to step in, check on him, and ask if he had truly failed. Damien chuckled and admitted he had told him he couldn't cure him, but when Gwen opened his eyes, his grandchildren hugged him tightly, claiming he had scared them to death, causing Gwen to smile and rush to comfort them while Damien stood shocked by the unexpected warmth. Guan stared at his hands and whispered that for the very first time since he fell sick, he felt okay again. He thanked Li San for the help, and Lian said she could save him now that he was here. In the future, if someone poisoned him again, he could only pray, And as Tanjin and Tanju realized it was more than just a sickness, they grew nervous while Damien approached with a gloomy face to tell him not to think he could speak so freely just because he had cured his father, since no one could harm him under the Gu family's protection, and his declining health was actually due to his own power. Yet he kept slandering the head without reply, leading Tanjin to say her uncle had always. Seemed strange, since her grandfather hadn't studied supernatural abilities for long, and her brother agreed that Grandpa had always been in good health. Even though his superpowers first made his legs weak, his health stayed fine until he began taking Uncle Damon's medicine, which made Gwen's hands clench in fear as she wondered if her son was poisoning him. Damien snatched his nephew by the collar and shouted, "What is this nonsense a stranger is saying?" before doubting him. While Tanju tried to calm him down, Gwen glanced at his son, handed over the medicine he had been taking, and asked if he could try to prove his innocence. As Damon angrily asked if someone doubted him, Lian gave him medicine to prove it was safe, but his nervousness made his father furious, leading Damon to silently vow revenge by shooting the doctor, only for the MC to catch the bullet just in time, while the terrified doctor claimed his own fear proved the medicine was poisoned. Gwen shouted that Damien was to blame, but the doctor cried out that the medicine was fine and someone else must have poisoned it to frame him, while he raised his shaking hands and begged him not to dare hurt the leader's health. Lian said he wouldn't stop until he found the Yellow River. Suddenly, he appeared right in front of him, waved his hand to disarm him, and ripped his sleeve, revealing red marks that Andrew explained weren't spots but scars from poison eating away the skin. Damien was terrified to learn that MC had slipped poison into Gwen's medicine years ago, a slow-acting toxin that had now seeped through his skin and stolen most of his life. So he begged MC for help while Lei Sun stormed in, kicked MC out, and told Tianjin's grandfather the truth about the betrayal. Afterward, Damien turned to his father and admitted that his obsession had caused him to make a terrible mistake, begging for forgiveness. Gwen admitted to plotting his father's death and spreading lies about others, and now, terrified and cast out, he has no place left in the Gu family. Damon was so scared he could barely breathe, imagining the torture that awaited him at the inspection, yet he knew it was better to go there and refresh his memory. After the guards grabbed him, he begged his father not to send him there to that inhuman place, and Tion couldn't believe her uncle could do such a thing to family. But her brother comforted her by saying they were lucky the master was there to save their grandfather. Meanwhile, Gwen apologized to Lian, admitting his lack of discipline had been funny to others, and now feeling great, he wanted to talk to her about where the belief in the Wuju ring actually comes from. Afterward, they moved into his office and took their seats at the table. Gwen handed over a bunch of photos showing the relics of cultivators and explained that back in his youth, he found an ancient tomb and sent explorers there, which is where they uncovered most of the old treasures, including the Wuji ring. MC looked at the photo and realized these massive ruins must belong to a time of powerful spiritual energy, likely hiding something underground that could help him grow stronger. He asked where the ruins were, and the reply was that his men accidentally triggered a trap while exploring the tomb, causing it to collapse and leaving no place to visit, though he promised to find the remaining relics instead, and when asked if it seemed strange for a researcher to help, he laughed and said his own journey began young with a hunger for power and money, only to later learn that such abilities are like poisonous poppy seeds that slowly ruin the mind, a truth he ignored back. Then, while enjoying the rewards of his dangerous experiments, he brushed aside every danger and kept digging, only to realize that by staring into the void, he had already become one of its trapped, screaming shadows. He worries that others who are just as innocent and foolish will make the exact same mistakes. So he quietly dug deep into the old ways. Lian believed superpowers were a gift from immortal spirits that could turn evil, while Gwen promised nothing in return and saw helping him as a blessing for his family, meaning if MC taught him the art, Gwen would trust the future of his house entirely to him. So MC handed over the photos and walked toward the exit, insisting they only talk about terms once the relics were found. Meanwhile, the Wanjin club was a total mess, but Chinhu walked right in, happily asking his dad how things were with that guy, and if he finally taught him a lesson. Seeing the debris under his feet, he frowned and wondered, what happened here? What gang was this old idiot involved with again? When Chania turned to him, he saw his battered face and exclaimed in shock, "Is he really his father? How did he even get beaten like that?" Chun Xiao, in a rage, punched him in the face, causing him to fall and exclaiming that he always causes him trouble. His son grabbed his hand, which was burning from his blow, and asked why he did that. He didn't answer. In rage, he ordered him to get out of his sight. After recalling the chaos Tanju caused by attacking Lian's side, the man cursed his son for picking the wrong enemy and getting involved with Li Zan, only for Wukong to remind him that fighting the Gu family was pointless now that the Wanjin had provoked them, so they must focus on hosting their Eastern guests before Chun Shirao warned him to move faster or face his fury. While Li San and Ji strolled across the university grounds during their break, she turned to ask what they had said to Headmaster Gu. As he walked away, his face was a blank sheet, but when he stepped out to say goodbye, he was beaming with joy, and the MC explained they were just talking deals. The girl instantly pictured Lai, Zan, and Tanjin in wedding dresses, hoping they were just talking about business, but shuddered at the thought and cried out that this couldn't be true, puffed out her cheeks in offense, and told him he couldn't leave her and her mother, which left him looking confused. Suddenly, Chun Hu appeared, and while students whispered that he'd beaten up Lian yesterday and was here for revenge, Chun and his friend rushed forward only to drop to their knees, bowing and begging for forgiveness, leaving everyone stunned as one student asked why he treated the principal's son like a fool. As the MC walked right past them, he told the guy to leave and stay away from him, muttering, "Geez, she again." He agreed, and right then, the girl's phone buzzed with a message that made her eyes go wide with fear. Noticing this, the MC asked what was wrong, and she quickly regained her smile to say everything was fine and they should go before class started. It turned out Dongfang Yuanshou had sent her a message asking to meet up on Saturday. A few days later, on a sunny Saturday at Yajing University, the protagonist sat frozen in a meditative pose beside a massive football field while passing students laughed and wondered if he even understood what he was doing. He knew this quiet moment all too well, and another voice reminded them to keep their whispers even softer. Chun stood by his side until the protagonist unleashed a burst of energy, freezing everyone in shock as they screamed insults about the sudden chill and his ruined legs, only for him to glare at them and scoff at their weakness before Shu. He pointed a finger at them, and they crashed to the floor, stunned, realizing they had just faced the firstborn of chaos. The protagonist watched them disappear, shivering at how creepy the whole thing felt. They bolted away, screaming apologies and admitting he was right, but even at the 7th level of their power training, the air felt too thin for them to break through, leaving their grandpa Gu to wonder why he hasn't found a place rich with energy to finally make his big leap. Then the main character grabbed the phone and called, "Hey, Aunt Willow," only to hear her say, "Oh no, Lian," because Changyin had just rushed home and stolen their GI, so the protagonist asked where he went before Chang stepped forward to say, "All right, good girl, we need to move faster now." She walked past him, and he touched her shoulder, but she quickly pulled away and told him that while his daughter would help him, their lives would never be father and daughters again. MC walked up to the staff, who shouted an apology and told him the hotel was temporarily closed, but when he asked where GC was, a worker pretended not to know, thinking G was a special guest and that this man shouldn't be allowed to bother the Eastern Lord. So he firmly told MC that the hotel isn't a place for just anyone to barge in. He begged him to get out right now, but the guard just held up a hand and shouted that if he didn't get it, they'd have to speak a different language. Guards charged at the hero with their weapons, slamming harmlessly against his magical shield, their shouting turning to panic as he effortlessly repelled them, only for the situation to shift when a senior guard recognized the intruder as Lian and dropped his cigar in shock, realizing he had made a huge mistake by threatening the wrong person. The protagonist asked where GI was, and, as his subordinate whispered that the Eastern Lord had invited her to be with Lian, the hotel owner stepped in to say she was already in a fancy room with her friends, urging them to take his brother there right away. The subordinate nodded, yes. Then the employee turned to his boss and warned that if they let Lyson in, the Eastern Lord would never forgive them so easily. He had to sacrifice her, but he didn't mind since it was such a lucky break. Yet when the MC stepped forward and called him an idiot for trying to force the situation, the MC suddenly grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. He began screaming, he has to let him go, while MC replied, "A father who betrayed his own daughter. He is full of kindness, yet will meet his end by his own hand before he hurls someone against a wall and orders them to vanish," leaving Changyin staring in awe as if a demon had taken over, while Yuano whispers that after so long apart, the reunion is still too irresistible to ignore. Her eyes sparkled like precious gems, and he instantly lost his cool, reaching for her face until she slapped his hand away and told him to stop. He insisted she wasn't being serious. She grabbed her purse and stood up to leave because they were done, but he invited her to dinner instead. He lifted the glass for a sip and said, "If she wants to go, she can." He wouldn't stop her, but she wondered what her father would do to her mother if she did, so she turned around angrily and shouted while he asked her to sit and stay a bit longer, explaining that he was sorry for the bad impression he made because he struggles to hold back his feelings. He poured another drink and claimed he had come to clear the air, handing her the glass to show her that she could trust him even as she frowned, wondering why he was being so kind unless she had upset him and risked her mother getting hurt. He had secretly mixed the wine with a black market love potion that would make anyone who drank it fall head over heels for him. knowing she had to finish the glass to become his. But just as she was about to, the door flew open and they stared in shock while Yuanshuo demanded to know who dared interfere, only for the protagonist to step forward and announce that he had come for GC. She stepped up to him and whispered, "It's him, Lian." And after he nodded in agreement, Yuano muttered, "Li San, that fool," then stood up to ask if the man thought he could ruin everything before focusing power at his fingertips, clenching his fist and screaming that the man must die, only for Gi to cry out, "Li San," in terror until he shielded her with his hand and told her not to be afraid. He shouted that he lost control, unleashed a burst of power that sent Yuano flying, and then screamed in pain as blood spurted from his mouth, and he crashed into the wall, wondering what had happened and where that sudden strength came from, only for the protagonist to point a finger at him and declare that since he insulted his family, he was going to make him pay. He unleashed a burst of power that sent an explosion flying. Right now, Gi Likuan, the Dongfang family's 9th-level bodyguard, stood in front of Yuano holding a shield made of super strong metal to keep him safe. He spun around to warn his master that the enemy was a powerhouse who needed to be left to his own men, then vowed with a dramatic chest gesture that he would not stop until he had beheaded the foe, a threat the MC immediately dismissed by thinking of a special metal called Refinninki before claiming to show off some tricks, only for Lai to frown and declare that since no one dares hurt the young master, he would rip out the enemy's heart, causing his hand to instantly turn into a gun. Then the hero shoved a table in front of him to stop the bullets, while Lycan poured fire into him without pause. Yuanshuo yelled, "Idiot, don't touch him," while the hero leaped out of the way of the bullets and marveled at how cool it would be to gather energy inside his body and then unleash it. Even so, his cultivation skills were nothing more than a poor copy, and with that thought in mind, he charged up and hit his opponent in the chest, only for Lycan to turn into a deadly blade and slash at the hero's neck. But the hero seized his arm and flipped him over, crashing him down to the ground. Suddenly, Lycan's mouth opened to show a cannon inside, which fired a bullet that made a small boom. MC caught every bullet that flew past his fingers and quipped, "Too slow," leaving Lin wondering if he had even advanced his attack, while the protagonist followed up with a powerful kick that made Lycan, clad in armor, think such strength and speed couldn't possibly exist, prompting him to watch as the protagonist leaped down while Lion aimed his weapon, now convinced the hero possessed a rare fusion of superpowers. Suddenly, MC popped up behind him and sent him flying with one powerful kick. After that, he traced a glowing symbol in the air, unleashing a massive burst of energy that shattered the building's wall, forcing Chania to duck and cover his head from the falling rubble while turning in confusion, not wanting any trouble at all, until Lycan slammed his fist down and shouted, "Where did he get those powers?" That is his way of being human. Whatever comes his way, he will finish the job. Right then, he tapped into an NB-type energy amplifier that surged power into his body for a brief moment, but cost him years of his life, causing his frame to twist, his scream to tear through the air, his eyes to bleed red, and his raw energy to pulse outward around him. MC felt a surge of energy bubbling inside him, almost like spiritual power, but not quite, before Lion's hands snapped back into the form of guns. He yelled that he had to bite, fired several strong shots that bounced off the barrier, and though he thought this attack was even stronger than before, a crack suddenly appeared in the shield. With a flick of his finger, he declared it was time to end it all, and unleashed the Hellhound to charge at Lycan. Thinking that the summoner's special ability was his true power, he blew up a Hellhound with grenades, only to have an even deadlier weapon erupt from his own chest as he screamed in frustration at his failure to kill it, while the exhausted summoner refused to give up until the protagonist appeared behind him, and ended the fight instantly with a deadly sword technique that shattered the Hellhound's head, proving the outcome was never in doubt, since this legendary blade comes in 6 powerful styles. Since the first day it was forged, the Sword of 6 Styles has been feared as one of the strongest weapons in the cultivation world. The first attack tore through a person's heart, and in the next heartbeat, Lycan collapsed and died, leaving the hero to walk forward, wonder about a world ruled by power, and suddenly find himself hugged from behind by a terrified girl screaming that she was scared to death, only for him to assure her she was safe and ask the Hellhound if it had summoned such a beast. "This tiny dog? How did he learn to call animals?" he asked. "He's under his command," she replied. "Under his command?" Then Qin stepped forward with Yuan, and he shouted, "Wow, a freak beat a level 9 expert." Qinton yelled, "Son, watch out." Yuano clenched his teeth and shouted back in anger. For the first time in his life, someone dared to openly challenge him right in front of the Dongfang family. And instantly, a swarm of guards closed in on the protagonist and GC. Yuano wiped his face and asked, "Does he think he can walk away alive?" But Gwen suddenly spoke up, reminding him to look after his family, which left Yuano stunned until Gwen asked if he even cared about them, prompting Yuanhuo to clutch his chest and realize with a jolt that the Gu family had been nothing but trouble for the Dongfang family all along. He wondered, the head of the family is usually nowhere to be found. Yet here he is, even though his father only invited him once, and that meeting was a waste, and besides, he doesn't even bother showing up at the Chamber of Commerce. Then Shen-Tan was startled to realize it was Mr. Gu. And since the fool had the Gu family backing, his bold behavior made sense, while Guan quickly wrote back to admit his own mistake and ask forgiveness, only for the protagonist to reassure him that everything was fine, though Ji remained scared and embarrassed, urging him to escort Miss Ji Chai to a quiet place to rest while handing over the rest to him. The protagonist stepped forward, claiming he was lucky and would survive, but Yuanhuo mocked him for hiding behind the Gu family, only for Guan to defend Li Zan as a hero who saved them, causing the guards to seize Yuanhuo, who struggled and pleaded that their families have always worked together, while Yuanhuo's confusion grew as he realized the Dongfang family might ally with Li Zan, the future heir, leading Guan to declare war and warn that such a quarrel will bring trouble to all. Cooperation will nearly vanish, for the family head will punish him and lose all trust in his ability to run the business, the guard said before swinging his fist and smashing Yuanshuo in the face. He begged Mr. Gu to admit his mistake and promised he'd never do it again, but Gwen insisted that insulting Lian was unforgivable and ordered Yuan to smash a glass over Chen Jian's face as his lesson, only for Yuan to later question on the hospital bed why Chen Jian didn't know that Lian was Gu's ex-wife's son and why he had such a strange connection to the Gu family. To which Chen Jian replied, he truly didn't know until he was told that many customers had canceled their orders, causing the Ji family to suffer heavy losses. Lian left him with no choice, just as he had left the Gu family. And while he cursed both her and their leader for wanting the Gu family's supernatural research results, Yuanshuo clenched his fist, vowing to thoroughly enjoy their suffering. After that, Cheng Tian poured water into a glass and claimed his high status made it improper to get his hands dirty, suggesting they use someone else to remove Lian since the Gu family couldn't be harmed easily. So when Yuanhuo asked if he meant them, Cheng Tian smiled, took the glass, and confirmed exactly. He must let them send Lian to hell. In the blink of an eye, Lion dropped to one knee and shouted that Mr. Li's powers were mighty. His heart was pure. He refused to spill blood. He had walked away from the Dongfang family to become a subordinate, and he did it all just because he wanted to stay clean and free. Leon grabbed the door and begged for a second chance, even offering to do anything, before slamming his head to the floor and begging to stay, though the protagonist only watched him think. First he served the Dongfang family, and now he wants to join them too. Could it really be that simple? Hitting him was worth it to snap him out of it, but since he's tough and different from normal folks, that trick might be useful now, so he told me to keep an eye on the door. This is the first order for now, he shouted in response to Master Li, while GC stepped out of the shower and asked Lian who had been there, to which she replied that Lion was there to protect everyone if needed, after which Tanjan waved a cheerful greeting at GI by the door, revealing that Grandpa had sent a special gift in suitcases for her brother because he felt the family lacked a worthy treasure. Gi wondered if he was sending Lian something again, just to buy her favor. The hero glanced at the magic weapons, noting they weren't perfect, but figured he could use them as scrap to forge something even better. He mentioned that all that was needed was a forge, so Tanjan raised her finger and explained that Grandpa had one hidden in a sealed cube at his antique shop to keep it safe until they could go get it together. Though Grandpa feared touching the treasure might ruin it, the protagonist decided to leave right away, prompting Tanjun to agree while Qi worried about their midnight adventure and asked if it was too dangerous, only for the protagonist to calmly suggest waiting until tomorrow morning, since that would be safer. See you tomorrow morning, the protagonist said as he closed the door and gently told the girl not to worry so much. After reassuring her with a firm grip on her shoulders that he would never let anyone hurt them, she looked down shyly and admitted her fear wasn't for herself, but for him being kidnapped. Kidnapped? He asked in confusion, only for her to shout back, "Idiot!" The next day, Yongming welcomed Miss Gu and pointed out Tianjin, who held the protagonist's hand with a bright smile, happily claiming she was so glad to spend time with her brother and introducing him as a very good friend of their Gu. Lin Ming grinned, pointed at the shop, and joked that Mr. Gu must apologize, while Mr. Li told the honored guests they'd come to see Mr. Gu's antiques and offer to guide them. So they stepped forward and stopped by the items as he claimed no one had touched this treasure during his entire stay. Ming yelled in shock that they mustn't touch the store's treasure, but the hero ignored him, turned around, and asked if they were ready to move on. "It's untouchable," he said, having spent a fortune sealing it away, fearing that if it broke, everything would be lost, but the protagonist unleashed a powerful energy wave to shatter the barrier anyway. As he stepped closer, he felt a surge of power and realized, the nearer you get to this door, the stronger the energy becomes. It's clearly meant for him. Then Ming adjusted his glasses and asked, "Madam, what level is Sir Li?" While she simply replied, "What level?" "Manipulator," she said, unaware of his surprise at her reply that she knows how strong he is. Suddenly, the guy scaled the ceiling, peered at the protagonist, and whispered, "So that's where he is," before the protagonist opened the door and stepped forward. He mused that a divine horn was passable, but when Ming called out, the MC thrust his hand forward and commanded it to break. A wild rush of energy slammed into the object and then exploded outward. The protagonist asked if the shopkeeper was finally awake, but the terrified man sank to his knees, clutching his head and screaming that it was over, only for a laughing spirit to burst from the object and roar that it was terribly hungry before reaching for him, while Tanjan shouted in horror that the horn was alive and demanding brains. Right then, Ming screamed in terror, "They're all dead," as the spirit lunged at him, roaring that it was about to eat his brains. MC fired a blast of energy at him, stepped back, and said that the man was too arrogant and needed a lesson. The spirit repeated itself, and the protagonist shouted, "Brains," before unleashing a powerful energy sword technique that caused the spirit to shrink and cry out, "Brain, it hurts." The protagonist then demanded that the spirit serve him or die, and a moment later, Tanjin ran up asking if it was over, while the protagonist simply nodded in awe. Ming followed, remarking that the spirit was so scared it might have died, just as the protagonist turned around and pointed forward, demanding to know how long it would take to kill him. The man hit the floor, reached out a hand, and said, "Boss," asking for forgiveness while the protagonist wondered who his client was. He yelled, "Boss, let him calm down and explain everything after he meets the king of hell." And then he threw a low-level spiderweb forward. In the blink of an eye, the web snaked around the hero's throat, and Tanjan let out a scream of pure terror. "Brother," the attacker screamed, "Idiot, you mustn't underestimate the enemy. He'll cut off your head for a reward." But then he wondered, "Strange, why isn't it cutting? For his web is stronger than steel." "What's wrong?" MC asked, then commanded, "Show him what he's capable of." And instantly, a spirit burst from the object, pointing a finger and screaming, "Brains!" The terrified man whispered, "What the hell?" as the spirit pierced his body and roared it again, after which MC declared, "He's his servant now, and those old bad habits must go," before crouching down to inspect the symbol on the man's hand. Ming screamed in terror. The Church of Blood Demons. It's a secret group of killers that's been around for thousands of years, taking orders only from rich and famous people, going crazy to get what they want, and killing regular folks all the time. The protagonist answered calmly, "He crossed Dongfu." Ming then shouted in shock, "What? He just had a falling out with the Dongfang family's lord." And suddenly Tanjin called to scream, "How dare Yuanshao send a hitman to his brother?" She was so furious, she was about to call her grandpa right away. Gwen warned Mr. Li that the Gu family wouldn't just stand by, while Yuanzhuo, lounging on two girls in a bar, calmly told Lian it wasn't personal before being hauled away by bodyguards, shouting about the Dongfang family and his captor Xin Yun as he was shoved into a car. Later at the Gu family's estate, Shiny Yun dragged Yuanzhuo by his hair as the butler stomped on his head, scolding him to respect the family and apologize on behalf of the Dongfang clan, before Tanju stepped out to announce that their grandfather was insulted by Yuanshuo. Now he's turned into their enemy and demands they go, while the Dongfang family must hold fast to their old ways. Xin Yun explained that the Dongfang family was acting on their own, and as Guan watched from the balcony, he promised that such a mistake would never happen again, while their conversation in the car revealed that the family head had told his butler to dismiss the candidate, stating he was no longer worthy to carry on the business and could never be seen in the Dongfang family again. Yuanshuo pressed his hand to his shoulder and yelled at Xin Yun that Lian was the trouble, demanding she beg for forgiveness before Xin Yun kicked him out of the speeding car, leaving a furious Yuanshuo shouting from behind that Lian was just a dog who would be the first to die once his father took the lead. Meanwhile, inside the forge where the protagonist was shaping magical items that smoked and looked weak against attack, the spirit suddenly shouted to eat brains while admitting it was hungry, forcing the protagonist to wonder how many hits it would take to survive such a weird and hungry companion. After MC stepped out of the room, he noticed GC and asked if he could speak with her for a moment. He sat beside her, holding the item as she wondered when he'd managed to buy it, and when he placed it around her neck, she felt like this fool had suddenly become much kinder. After that, he told her he made a special pendant for her to wear, saying it would keep her safe while he wasn't there to watch over her himself. She asked where he was heading, and he told her the Gu family had something ready for him, so she said he'd better hurry back. He nodded, stepped out of the room, and Lion waited at the door until Lion asked what the object in his hand was, only to be told it would help him guard the entrance during his training. "If he messes up, his life will be pure hell," he answered, "Yes, sir," before walking through the quiet suburb of Qing Kong and telling his commander, "Sir, that black raven isn't just a bird. It's an underground fighting ring where superpowered humans battle in the black market. The owner of the Death Arena is a strange man who won't let the Goof family into his land. But he agreed to let the two siblings apply together on the condition that they guard the entrance against any surprises inside, so the master could walk in with a peaceful heart knowing they would handle the danger." He grabbed Tanjin by the shoulder, and when she cried out in surprise, he explained that her strange new flames had become part of her, causing his clothes to tear as he screamed in a mix of fear and realization. Tanjin asked her brother why he stopped controlling his power, and though he told her not to worry, she could see he had changed because the flames no longer hurt him. She answered, and right after his words, a sweet smell that reminded her of her benefactor started to fill her very being. The protagonist declared that he had taken the seals off their Qi as a reward for braving the ruins. Afterward, they thanked him, and Tanju whispered that this man would soon become a great master who would face fire and water for his lord, all while a man in the underground arena threatened to take his daughter away if he lost another match, to which he simply nodded and said he understood. A man next to them warned that he'd kick his ass next time, while another bragged he'd even sold his eyes, leaving Tian to wonder if he really lost as she pulled her hood up to warn her brother about the deadly bandits hiding here, where the Death Arena's branches have spread everywhere. The organizers hold powerful secrets, and no one watches over them. This place has turned into a safe spot for bandits where the Gu family has lost all their power, and he must be careful of anyone wearing red bracelets since they are survivors of deadly battles. People wearing red bracelets are seasoned executioners who have fought in hundreds of battles and should not be taken lightly. Then a man walked up to Tanjin and asked, "Do they know each other?" "Oh, it's that girl from the movie. Come on, let him take a look at her face." Then the MC threw the man aside, and his comrade asked, "Is he asking for trouble? Why do we always get stuck with these annoying idiots every single year?" One huge headache. The protagonist told the man to leave, then pointed to the red bracelet. Luosan pressed his hand onto the protagonist's shoulder and asked, "Is he a complete beginner? Does he even know where he came from? And why is he suddenly acting out of turn?" Tanju shouted that Sean must kneel, admit his mistake, and let the MC decide whether to forgive him, noting the red bracelet on his wrist and warning him to be careful, while the stunned MC wondered how such a powerful aura could come from such a young body, only for the head of the underground death arena, Xianan, to calm Sean down by reminding them that these esteemed new guests still didn't know the rules, and to simply let the matter drop. Sean stepped forward and shouted that while the head had saved him, it shouldn't make him forget his place, before the head pointed out that Sean was an elite fighter in his arena with a fiery temper that often made him rude, then offered to guide them to a better spot where the head sat down to present a wine from his collection and asked if the Gu family's guest would like to try it, while the protagonist sensed an immortal relic nearby, and Tanju asked Lord Nan if he minded the master joining their duel since they had already agreed to the terms, only to be reminded that while it was their right to fight, they shouldn't blame the master for not warning them, as the duel was to the death and brought pure excitement without any cost. Tanjin yelled out, "Brother, maybe he'll change his mind, but it's super dangerous right here." Why did brother close his eyes? At that very moment, the protagonist shut his eyes to focus, realizing he was thinking of a soul-stealing relic. That would be a problem for anyone sneaking around, he said as he asked them to save him a place in the ruins before heading off. Tanju wondered if the Lord wanted to see their results, realizing he was worried after all, while others promised they wouldn't let him down. He stepped forward to deal with the relic, and as the Death Arena crowd cheered for a kill on their bet, he recalled how immortal cultivators loved these deadly fights, noting that since the soul-stealing relic only took souls and not the rest of him, entering with just a soul fragment made it safe. So with nothing left to worry about, he suddenly released energy from his fingertip. Meanwhile, while the ruins of an immortal cultivator lay beneath the Death Arena, a surge of energy sent the MC's spirit form soaring as he realized these vaults were built to gather power and keep time from changing what was inside. "Why is this relic such a problem?" he muttered as the statue suddenly came to life, confirming his fear that cultivators were guarding it, much like the powerful Blood Soul sect used to. With a sharp thought, he blasted the approaching monster with a surge of energy, slaying it instantly before the real danger could strike. MC spoke again as magic swords pierced the monster, and the protagonist realized the hidden formation's secret direction was safe from anyone watching. Then he spun around to hear a cry for help and saw Xiangying, trapped in seals and standing alone in the center of the magic circle. In the blink of an eye, her chain snapped apart and she let out a scream, quickly sitting up to ask, "Oh, she's grateful. What's his name? Did her father send him?" While the protagonist felt like he had finally found the perfect spot. After that, he told her that if she wanted to live, she had to go back to her body, and as he flew onward, he added that he wouldn't follow her since she was the only one afraid. And while he stared at her thinking she was scary, but also handsome, the real protagonist watched from the arena ruins waiting for them to arrive. After the host shout announced the next double battle between the Mo brothers and their rivals from the Gu family, a nearby old man couldn't believe his ears as the crowd erupted in confusion and anger over why the Gu family representatives were even there, while the Mo brothers calmly wondered if their opponents were just acting shy like little girls. Knowing that victory demands the ultimate sacrifice, he gripped his weapon and told the terrified, overconfident kids that facing death so often would make them regret their choice, while his sister Tanjin warned that their enemies looked powerful, only for him to reassure her that their master's help would make winning easy. He charged while Tanjin fired an ice blast, and the leader roared for the slaughter to begin so they could watch, but Tanju countered with a wall of fire that Mokian dodged easily. Mokian then flashed out of reach, making Tanju wonder if his brother was moving too fast before realizing the fight was lost, leading to a clash where Tanju kicked Mokian aside only for Mokian to hit him with dark energy, causing Tanjin to scream in fear as Moa attacked her instead, drawing angry shouts from the crowd demanding they destroy her brother's legs. The girl was pretty, and at that moment, the old man sitting next to the protagonist grumbled about bad disciples and a lost fight, while the hero thought the outcome was already decided, and Moyen casually tossed his weapon over his shoulder to tell the rich kid that his poisonous blade was no match for him as he promised to take care of his little sister, before Tanju knelt to concentrate energy, telling Moyen that if he were in the rich kid's place, he wouldn't be so confident, then coated his fist in fire and thanked the Lord for turning him into a different person. As he shouted those words and crashed to the earth, flames erupted and consumed everything around him. Mokian gripped his head and screamed, "Why hasn't he been poisoned? How is he still moving?" he asked, noting that the black market poison wasn't strong enough to kill him that easily. He thought his quick flames would burn away the poison before it could hurt him. But as Moa looked up in fear at her brother, turning into fire and cried out, the crowd screamed in horror, knowing he had lost everything. Those two fools took everything from him. But when he bet on the Gu family and won, he could finally pay off all his debts, only for Tanjin to walk up and ask pitifully if they were actually smart, while he folded his arms and admitted he had nothing good to say about them, leaving Tanju to apologize for letting him down. He said it was amazing and that if they worked a little harder, they'd reach a whole new level. They gripped their fists tight and cheered that they'd never stop working, but then stepped up and said, "Miss Gu, Mr. Gu." He cheered the winners on for their astonishing display. So perfect their control of supernatural power was that he was tempted to jump in himself. But Tanju rushed over to tell Mr. not to waste time on pleasantries and to rest easy since the sir would keep his promise. Only for the fighter with the red bracelet to challenge Mr. Li to a duel, forcing him to delay their business while Tanju pointed an accusing finger and shouted, "Mr. None." They kept their promise by fighting a death match. Yet the Black Raven still sent Mr. Li into the arena because his red bracelet meant any challenger could pick a fight, and the man said he couldn't explain breaking the rules to his bosses, even though saving Mr. Li felt like a kind gesture. MC accepted the fight, and since Tanji had no hope of stopping it, Tanju bowed and promised to watch the battle closely before the protagonist stepped through a barrier, put on a magical bracelet that checked his strength, and was called forward by a worker who stared in shock at his powerful, cheat-free stats before being told not to worry, since he was about to face a deadly blood demon in the arena. The host shouted to the crowd, "Are you ready for the next fight?" And the show began. The crowd roared as Li Zan, a fighter with a pale face, stepped into the death arena for the first time to face Sean, the strongest red bracelet champion who has already survived near-death experiences, with spectators betting everything on Sean to kick Li's ass. He must crush him into dust. Then Sean squeezed the sharp pendant in his hand, letting a few drops of blood fall as he stepped toward the hero and whispered, "We meet again, boy." They had promised to see each other once more. The crowd roared, "Let the fight begin." Sean waved his hand and challenged them to show their strength. The hero quickly built a shield around himself, fearing his own blood would explode without the bracelet to hold it back, and he nearly shattered into pieces across the arena. Sean asked if he should defend himself, but instead he charged forward, yelling, "How long can he last?" His strike bounced off the barrier, prompting the hero to step in and shout, "Lingyu blade technique, second style, Biwa breath." In an instant, stones floated into the air, making Sean realize with awe that his opponent could control them. So Sean wounded his own hand and waved his bleeding palm to splash the blood onto the floating stones and the ground below. He stared ahead just as the hero swung his weapon and jumped right at him. He swung, sending stone weapons flying everywhere as people cried out for Lord Shun to stand and kill the annoying newcomer, who made Sean admit he had underestimated him. With that, he hurled a giant rock at the hero, shouting for the beast to bite it and demanding the hero take the hit. But the hero instantly raised a shield, and the moment the rock struck, it exploded into a torrent of blood, causing the hero to thrust his hand forward and realize in an instant how to break through his own weak defenses with a clever twist, earning him a small wound on his cheek as Sean screamed in disbelief at the Blood Demon King's terrifying power to turn spilled blood against his foe, while the crowd erupted in laughter, calling the game mind-blowing as the boys' scattered thoughts filled the arena. The most thrilling sight is a fight to the death, and then Tanju grabbed his head, shouting that his master couldn't have survived this, wondering how to explain the chaos to his grandfather, while Tian comforted him. Yet Sean noticed the victory bell wasn't ringing as his opponent screamed in shock that the fighter he thought was weak had somehow survived, only for Sean to suddenly feel a fresh wave of attacks crashing into him. Where had his strength gone? The protagonist said, "It's time for the Xiaoshu blade. He must fall." He aimed a powerful blow straight at his opponent, and Sean spat out a clot of blood and fell to the ground. The audience wondered, what was that? Why did he fall? The host said,